The horse was already dying when Clara Bennett found him beneath the broken bridge outside Pine Creek. His breathing came in weak, painful pulls. Blood covered one side of his dark coat, and his front leg was trapped between two heavy pieces of wood. Frost lay over the ground, shining under the first gray light of morning. No rider stood nearby. No saddle remained on the horse's back. Only a torn leather strap hung from his side. Clara dropped the basket she was carrying and hurried down the steep bank. "Easy, boy," she whispered. "I am not going to hurt you." The horse lifted his head, but he had little strength left. His eyes were wide with fear. He tried to pull away, and the broken wood pressed harder against his leg. Clara moved slowly. She had spent most of her 24 years around horses. Her father had once owned a small stable, and her mother had known how to treat wounds before fever took her life. Clara had learned everything she could from both of them. She placed one hand against the horse's neck. His skin was hot. "Too hot. You have been here all night," she said softly, "but you are not dying today." The horse's ear moved toward her voice. That small movement gave her hope. Clara ran back to the small ranch house where she lived with her father and younger brother. She woke 15-year-old Samuel and told him to bring ropes, blankets, and the old farm wagon. Their father was still asleep in the next room. His cough had grown worse during the cold weeks, and Clara did not want to wake him until she knew what could be done. Samuel followed her without asking questions. Together, they spent nearly 2 hours freeing the horse. The bridge beam had pressed deep into his leg, but the bone did not seem broken. Clara tied ropes around the wood while Samuel used a long iron bar to lift it. When the pressure was finally gone, the horse tried to rise. He fell at once. Clara dropped beside him and held his head. "Do not fight yet," she whispered. "Save your strength." With the wagon beside them, they made a bed from old blankets and pulled him onto it inch by inch. The horse trembled from pain, but he never kicked. He watched Clara the entire time, as if her face was the only safe thing left in the world. They brought him to the empty barn behind the Bennett house. The barn had once held 6 horses. Now it held only dust, old tools, and memories. The family had sold their last 2 mares the year before to pay part of the debt on the land. Clara spread fresh straw inside the largest stall. She washed the horse's wounds, cleaned the blood from his coat, and wrapped his injured leg. Under the dirt, he was a beautiful animal. He was black with a small white mark between his eyes. His shoulders were strong, and his coat had the shine of a horse that had once been carefully fed and trained. Even without a saddle or brand, Clara could tell he belonged to someone wealthy. Samuel stood at the stall door. "Who do you think owns him?" "I do not know. There are no ranches around here with horses like that. Someone may be searching for him." Samuel looked toward the house. "Pa will say we cannot afford the grain." Clara knew he was right. Their father, Thomas Bennett, was a gentle man, but kindness could not fill an empty feed barrel. The bank in Silver Junction had given them until spring to make a payment. If they failed, the ranch would be taken. "We will worry about that when he wakes," Clara said. The horse did not stand that day. By sunset, his fever had grown worse. Clara stayed beside him through the night. She pressed cold cloths against his neck and gave him small amounts of water. Every time his breathing changed, she woke from the chair beside the stall. Near dawn, the horse opened his eyes and pushed his nose against her hand. Clara smiled through her exhaustion. "That is right," she whispered. "Stay with me." Her father discovered the horse the next morning. Thomas stood in the barn wearing his old coat, his gray hair uncombed. He looked at the animal, then at the bloodied cloths and empty water buckets. "Where did he come from?" "Under the North Bridge." Thomas slowly entered the stall. "Does he have a brand?" "Not one I can find." "Did you send word to town?" "Samuel rode to Pine Creek yesterday. No one has reported a missing horse." Her father looked at the grain bucket. "We do not have enough feed for another month." "I know. And the doctor says I need medicine." "I know that too." Thomas closed his eyes for a moment. Clara waited for him to tell her the horse had to go. Instead, her father touched the animal's neck. "Your mother would have done the same thing," he said quietly. Then he walked away. For 3 days, the fever held on. On the 4th morning, it broke. The horse drank half a bucket of water and ate a handful of oats from Clara's palm. She sat on the barn floor and cried with relief. Samuel laughed when he saw the horse stand for the first time. He leaned against the wall and covered his mouth as the black stallion placed weight on his injured leg. "He is going to live." Clara nodded. "Yes, he is." They began calling him Midnight because of his dark coat. As the weeks passed, Midnight grew stronger. Clara walked him slowly around the barn each morning. At first, he limped badly, then the limp became smaller. He followed Clara everywhere. When she cleaned the stall, he stood close behind her. When she sat on the fence, he rested his head over her shoulder. When strangers came near the barn, his ears flattened and he moved between them and Clara. Word spread through Pine Creek that the Bennett family had found a fine black stallion. Men came to look at him. A horse trader offered Clara $50. She refused. A rancher offered $100. She refused him too. "You do not own that horse," the rancher warned. "When the real owner comes, you will get nothing." Clara knew that. Still, she could not sell the animal she had saved. Nearly a month passed before the first strange rider appeared. He came from the west near sundown, wearing a long brown coat and a silver badge. He introduced himself as Deputy Warren Cole from Silver Junction. "I am looking for a missing stallion," he said. "Black coat, white mark on the forehead, injured near the North Road." Clara's heart tightened. Midnight stood behind her inside the barn. "Who owns him?" she asked. The deputy removed his hat. "A man from Red Hollow." Clara had heard of Red Hollow. Everyone in western Colorado had. It was the largest cattle ranch in the territory, with thousands of acres, hundreds of workers, and more money than some towns would see in a lifetime. Its owner was Harrison Kane. People called him the Duke of Red Hollow. Some said the name came from the way he ruled his land. Others said it came from the cold pride in his face. He was young, powerful, and feared by men who had never even met him. Clara looked toward Midnight. "This horse belongs to Harrison Kane." The deputy nodded. "He disappeared after Mr. Kane was attacked on the mountain road. We found the saddle 2 miles from the bridge. There was blood on it, but no horse." "Was Mr. Kane badly hurt?" "He survived." The deputy stepped closer to the stall. Midnight suddenly pinned his ears and struck the door with one hoof. The deputy moved back. "He does not seem pleased to see me. He does not trust strangers." "He trusted you." Clara rested a hand on Midnight's neck. He did not have much choice. Deputy Cole watched them quietly. "Mr. Kane has offered $500 for the return of this horse." $500. The amount could save the Bennett ranch. It could pay the bank, buy medicine for her father, and fill the barn with grain. Clara should have felt joy. Instead, she felt as if someone had placed a cold hand around her heart. "When will Mr. Kane come for him?" she asked. The deputy's face became serious. "He is already on his way." At that same moment, the sound of several horses rose from the road. Clara stepped outside. 6 riders were approaching beneath the red evening sky. 5 wore the clothes of ranch hands. The man riding in front sat tall in a black coat, one shoulder held stiffly as if an old wound still troubled him. Even from a distance, Clara could feel the power in the way he carried himself. Midnight pushed past her. The stallion limped into the yard and lifted his head. The man in the black coat pulled his horse to a sudden stop. For one long moment, the rider stared at Midnight. Then his eyes moved to Clara. His face showed no smile, but something deep and painful changed in his expression. He climbed slowly from the saddle. "You found him," Harrison Kane said. Clara kept one hand on Midnight's neck. "I found him beneath the bridge." The Duke of Red Hollow looked at the clean bandage around the horse's leg, the healed wounds along his side, and the trust in the stallion's eyes. Then he looked at Clara again. "No," he said quietly, "you did more than find him." He stepped closer, but Midnight moved in front of Clara and blocked his path. The ranch hands fell silent. Harrison stopped. A strange look crossed his face as he watched his own horse protect the poor ranch woman who had saved his life. Then he reached inside his coat and removed a folded paper. "I came here to collect my horse," he said, "but I also came because your family's name appeared in another matter." Clara stared at the paper. "What matters?" Harrison Kane held it out to her. "The bank plans to take this ranch in 10 days. Clara's fingers went cold. "How do you know that?" "Because I bought the debt this morning." Clara stared at Harrison Kane as the evening wind moved through the empty yard. "You bought our debt." Harrison held the paper out, but Clara did not take it. "Yes." "Why?" His eyes moved toward Midnight. The stallion stood close to Clara, his dark body between them. His injured leg still carried less weight than the others, but he held his head high. "Your bank manager sent a list of unpaid properties to several buyers," Harrison said. "Your ranch was included. And you purchased it before coming here." "I did." Clara felt anger rise through her fear. "You knew we could not pay. I knew the bank intended to remove your family in 10 days. So you decided to do it yourself." One of Harrison's ranch hands shifted in his saddle, but Harrison did not look away from Clara. "I have not come to remove anyone." "Then what have you come to do?" "To make an offer." Clara finally took the paper. She could understand only part of the legal writing, but she saw her father's name, the amount owed, and Harrison Kane's signature at the bottom. The Duke of Red Hollow now owned every dollar of their debt. Thomas came from the house with Samuel beside him. When Clara handed him the paper, the old man's face lost its color. "Mr. Kane," Thomas said, "I can explain." "There is no need." "I borrowed that money after my wife died. Then I became sick and the crops failed." "I know." Thomas lowered his eyes. "I will repay you." Harrison looked at the tired man, then at the small house and broken fences. "I did not come for payment tonight." Clara stepped closer. "What is your offer?" Harrison watched Midnight for a moment before answering. "Your family may remain here. The debt will be delayed for 1 year. Your father will receive the medicine he needs, and your brother will be given work at Red Hollow if he wants it." Samuel's eyes widened. Clara did not feel relieved. "What do you want in return?" "I want you to come to Red Hollow." The yard became silent. Thomas looked up sharply. "For what purpose?" "To care for Midnight until he is fully sound." Clara looked at the horse. "He may need 3 more months. Then you will remain for 3 months. And after that, you may return here." The offer should have sounded fair, yet Harrison's voice was so controlled that Clara felt there was something he had not said. "Why can your own stablemen not care for him? They can feed him and clean his stall. They cannot get near his injured leg." "He trusted you before." "He did." "What happened?" Harrison's face became still. "That is not part of the agreement." Clara almost refused him. Then her father began coughing. The sound bent him forward. Samuel quickly placed a hand on his back. Thomas tried to wave him away, but the coughing did not stop. Clara looked at the paper again. 1 year. Medicine. Work for Samuel. A chance to save the home her parents had built. "When would we leave?" she asked. Harrison's answer came at once. "At sunrise." That night, Clara packed 1 small bag. Thomas tried to convince her not to go. "You do not know that man," he said from the kitchen table. "You do not know what happens at Red Hollow." "I know what happens here if I stay. That debt is mine. This family is mine." Her father looked down at his hands. "I promised your mother I would protect you. You have protected us for years. Let me protect you now." Thomas's eyes filled with shame. Clara knelt beside him. "This is not your failure, Pa. We lost Mama. The crops failed, you became sick. None of that was your choice." He placed his hand against her cheek. "You are too much like her." Clara smiled sadly. "You always say that when I refuse to listen." Samuel walked her to the barn before dawn. Midnight was placed inside a wide-horse wagon with thick straw and strong walls. Harrison had brought it so the stallion would not need to walk the long road. Samuel stood beside Clara as the ranch hands prepared to leave. "You will write every week. If Kane treats you badly, I will come get you." Clara looked at her thin, younger brother. "With what army?" "I will find one." She hugged him tightly. Harrison waited beside his horse. He did not rush her. When Clara climbed into the wagon beside Midnight, he gave the signal and the group started west. The road to Red Hollow took most of the day. They crossed cold rivers, open fields, and a high ridge covered with pine trees. Harrison rode near the wagon but spoke little. Once, when a wheel struck a deep hole, Midnight lost his balance. Clara caught his halter and calmed him. Harrison stopped the whole group. "Is he hurt?" "No." "Are you certain?" Clara looked through the open back of the wagon. For the first time, Harrison's cold control had broken. Fear showed clearly in his eyes. "He is safe," she said. Harrison nodded, but he stayed close to the wagon for the rest of the journey. Red Hollow appeared just before sunset. Clara had expected a large ranch house. She had not expected a place that looked like its own town. The main house stood on a hill above the valley, built from dark stone and timber. Long barns stretched behind it. Fenced pastures covered the land in every direction. Dozens of workers moved between the buildings, and hundreds of cattle filled the lower fields. When the wagon entered the stable yard, every man stopped working. Midnight had returned. An older man with a gray beard hurried forward. His name was Eli Turner, the head stableman. His eyes filled when he saw the stallion. "I thought I would never see him again." Harrison stood beside the wagon. "Prepare the corner stall, use fresh straw. No one touches the injured leg except Miss Bennett." Eli looked at Clara. "You are the woman who saved him." Clara nodded. The old man removed his hat. "Then you have my thanks." Midnight refused to leave the wagon until Clara stepped down first. He followed her slowly across the yard and into the stable. Harrison watched every step. Once the horse was settled, Clara examined his leg. The journey had caused some swelling, but the tendon was still healing well. She mixed cool water with herbs and wrapped the leg again. When she finished, she found Harrison standing outside the stall. "He will recover," she said. "You are certain?" "If he is not pushed too quickly. No one will ride him until you say he is ready." "That may be months." "Then it will be months." Clara studied him. "Why does he fear your stablemen?" Harrison's expression closed. "I told you that was not part of the agreement. You brought me here to heal him. I cannot do that without knowing what happened." His jaw tightened. He was frightened after the attack. "What attack?" Harrison looked toward the stable door to make sure no one was near. "3 men stopped me on the mountain road. One grabbed Midnight's reins. Another struck him with a whip. He reared and I fell." Clara felt anger burn inside her. "Who were they?" "I do not know." "You believe them?" "No." The simple answer carried more weight than a longer one. Harrison touched the stiff shoulder Clara had noticed earlier. "When Midnight ran, they followed him. I believed they had taken him." "Why would anyone attack you?" "I own land people want." "That is not the whole answer." "No." He turned to leave. Clara spoke before he reached the door. "Mr. Kane." He stopped. "Did you truly buy our debt only because you needed someone to care for Midnight?" His back remained toward her. "That was one reason." "What was the other?" Harrison slowly faced her. I wanted to meet the woman who stayed beside my horse while he was dying. Clara did not know what to say. He gave her a small nod and left the stable. During the next 2 weeks, Clara learned the daily life of Red Hollow. She rose before sunrise and spent each morning with Midnight. She walked him around the stable yard, changed his bandages, and slowly taught him not to fear the other workers. Harrison came every morning. At first, he stood outside the stall. Then Clara made him enter. Midnight watched him with uncertain eyes, but he did not move away. "Do not reach for him," Clara said. "Let him come to you." Harrison waited. After several minutes, Midnight stepped forward and placed his nose against Harrison's chest. The Duke of Red Hollow closed his eyes. His hand rose, then stopped before touching the horse. "You may touch him," Clara said softly. Harrison laid his palm against Midnight's neck. The stallion remained still. When Harrison opened his eyes, there was a pain in them Clara had not expected. "I should have looked for him myself," he said. "You are injured." "That is not why I stayed away." "Then why?" "I was afraid I would find him dead." Clara understood that fear. She had felt it every morning during Midnight's fever. "You found him alive." "No," Harrison said, "you did." After that morning, something changed between them. Harrison began joining Clara for breakfast in the small kitchen beside the stable. He asked about her father and Samuel. He sent medicine to Pine Creek without telling her, though Thomas mentioned it in a letter. Clara learned that Harrison did not enjoy large meals or expensive parties. He preferred coffee, plain bread, and long rides across his land. He knew every worker's name, but most of them feared speaking freely around him. He also carried more loneliness than any man Clara had ever known. One evening, she found him standing outside Midnight's stall after everyone else had gone. "You do not have to watch him all night," she said. "I know." "Then why are you here?" Harrison looked at the stallion. "Because this is the only place on the ranch that feels honest." Clara leaned against the door. "Are the other places dishonest?" "People tell a wealthy man what they believe he wants to hear." "I do not." "No, you have made that very clear." A small smile touched his face. It changed him completely. Clara suddenly saw the younger man hidden beneath the hard name and dark coat. Then a gunshot broke the silence. Midnight reared inside the stall. Clara rushed toward him, but Harrison caught her arm. "Stay behind me." A second shot came from outside. Men shouted in the yard. Harrison drew his revolver and moved to the stable door. Clara stayed close behind him despite his order. A ranch hand lay near the water trough, blood running from his shoulder. Another man pointed toward the north fence. Someone was inside the stable yard. Harrison looked back toward Midnight. The stall door stood open. Clara's heart stopped. She had closed it herself. On the ground beside the stall lay a piece of rope, a leather whip, and a folded note. Harrison picked up the paper. His face became cold as he read it. "What does it say?" Clara asked. He handed it to her. Only 7 words had been written across the page. "The horse survived, the woman will not." Harrison read the note twice, but the words did not change. "The horse survived, the woman will not." Clara felt Midnight trembling beside her. The stallion had backed into the far corner of the stall, his eyes wide and white. The leather whip on the ground had brought back the fear of the mountain road. Harrison folded the note and placed it inside his coat. "You are leaving Red Hollow tonight," he said. Clara turned toward him. "No." His eyes hardened. "That was not a request. And I am not one of your workers. Someone entered my stable yard to kill you. Someone entered because of Midnight. If I leave, they may follow me to Pine Creek. My father and Samuel would be in danger." Harrison's jaw tightened because he knew she was right. Eli and several ranch hands carried the wounded worker into the main house. The bullet had passed through his shoulder, and Clara helped clean the wound. The man would live, but he had seen little. The shooter wore a dark hat, he said through clenched teeth. I saw him near the north fence. Another man opened the stall. Did you recognize either of them? Harrison asked. The worker shook his head. Clara looked at the leather whip Harrison had brought from the stable. There was a small silver mark on the handle. A letter R inside a circle. She had seen the same mark before. Red Hollow uses this mark, she said. Harrison took the whip from her. No, our mark is a K beneath a mountain. Then whose is this? Eli entered the room and stopped when he saw it. His face changed. That belongs to Richard Vale. Harrison became very still. Richard Vale owned a ranch west of Red Hollow. For years, he had tried to buy the valley road that crossed Harrison's land. The road led to water, cattle markets, and the railroad being built near Silver Junction. Harrison had refused every offer. Vale's men used that mark on their tack, Eli said. I repaired one of their bridles last spring. Clara looked at Harrison. Was Richard Vale one of the men who attacked you? I never saw their faces. But he had a reason. Yes. Harrison ordered every gate closed. Armed riders searched the ranch, but they found only hoofprints leading toward the northern hills. That night, Clara was moved into a room inside the main house. 2 men stood outside the door, and another guarded the window below. She could not sleep. Near midnight, she heard quiet footsteps in the hall. The door opened, and Harrison entered. He had removed his coat, but his revolver remained at his side. His injured shoulder had grown stiff from the cold. You should be resting, Clara said. So should you. Is Midnight safe? Eli is with him. 6 men are around the stable. Clara sat beside the fire. Why does Vale want the road so badly? The railroad company plans to build a station near Silver Junction. Whoever controls the Valley Road will control most of the cattle trade in this part of Colorado. And you will not sell? No. Even after he tried to kill you. Harrison looked into the fire. If I sell, Vale will charge every small rancher to use the road. Families like yours will lose what little they have left. Clara had believed Harrison guarded his land because he loved power. Now she understood he was protecting people who might never know it. You could have told them, she said. I do not need their praise. Maybe not, but you might need their trust. He looked at her. You speak to me as if you have known me for years. No one else seems willing to speak to you at all. A faint smile appeared, then disappeared. I was not always like this. What happened? Harrison sat across from her. My father trusted everyone. His business partner stole from him for years. By the time my father learned the truth, Red Hollow was nearly lost. He died believing kindness had made him weak. So you decided never to trust anyone. I decided never to need anyone. Clara's voice softened. And has that made you happy? No. The answer came so quickly that it hurt her. Harrison leaned forward. When I thought Midnight was dead, I told myself he was only a horse. Then I learned someone had saved him. I asked about you because I wanted to know what kind of person would sit beside a dying animal through 3 nights. You bought our debt before you met me. I wanted to help your family. You could have simply paid it. I thought you would refuse charity. I would have. That is why I offered work. Clara looked at him across the fire. And now I want you to stay for reasons that have nothing to do with Midnight. Neither of them moved. Then a bell began ringing outside. Harrison stood at once. The stable bell. They ran through the dark house and into the yard. Flames rose from the hay barn beside Midnight's stable. Men shouted and carried buckets from the pump. Smoke rolled across the yard. Horses kicked against their doors in terror. Get the horses out, Harrison shouted. Clara ran toward Midnight's stall. Harrison caught her hand. You cannot go inside. He will not follow anyone else. The stable roof had not caught fire yet, but smoke filled the doorway. Clara covered her mouth with her sleeve and entered. Midnight was striking the stall door with his front hoof, his injured leg bent under him each time. Clara opened the door. "Come with me, boy." The stallion refused to move. A piece of burning wood fell into the passage behind her. Clara grabbed Midnight's halter and placed her hand against his neck. "I see you," she whispered. "You are not finished yet." The words reached him just as they had beneath the bridge. Midnight lowered his head. Clara led him through the smoke. They were almost at the door when a man stepped from an empty stall. Richard Vale. He held a gun in one hand. "You should have left when you had the chance," he said. Midnight reared. Vale fired. The bullet struck the wooden wall beside Clara. Harrison appeared through the smoke and threw himself at Vale. The two men crashed against the stall door. Vale's gun fell into the straw. Clara pulled Midnight toward the yard, but the stallion turned back when Harrison cried out. Vale had struck Harrison's injured shoulder. Harrison fell to one knee. Vale reached for the gun. Midnight lunged forward and knocked him against the wall with his chest. Vale fell hard, and Harrison kicked the gun away. Ranch hands rushed inside and dragged Vale from the burning stable. Harrison struggled to his feet. "Clara, get out." This time she obeyed. They led Midnight into the open yard as part of the stable roof began to fall. The workers managed to stop the fire before it reached the main barn, but the hay building was destroyed. Deputy Warren Cole arrived before sunrise. Vale's two hired men were found hiding near the north fence. One confessed to the mountain attack. Vale had ordered them to frighten Harrison into selling the road. When Midnight escaped, Vale feared the horse might lead someone to the place where the attack happened and reveal tracks from his ranch. The second attack had been meant to remove both the horse and Clara. Vale was taken to the jail in Silver Junction. When the danger had passed, Harrison sat on a bench outside the stable while Clara wrapped his shoulder. "You saved me," he said. "Midnight saved you." "You brought him out." "He brought you out." Harrison looked toward the stallion standing beside Eli. "Then I owe both of you." Clara tied the bandage. "You have a habit of thinking everything is a debt. Perhaps because debts are easier than feelings." She looked at him. "And what are you feeling now?" Harrison raised his good hand and gently touched her cheek. "Terrified." Clara almost laughed. "Of Richard Vale. Of asking you to stay and hearing you say no." The morning light spread across the valley. Clara thought about Pine Creek, her father, Samuel, and the small ranch that had nearly been taken. She also thought about the lonely man who had bought the debt not to control her, but to protect her family without wounding their pride. "I will not stay because you own my family's debt," she said. Harrison lowered his hand. "I understand. I will stay only if the debt is returned to my father. I will sign it over today. And Samuel must be paid fairly for his work." "He will be. And Midnight is never to be ridden before I say he is ready." "I would not dare argue." Clara smiled. "Then I will stay." Harrison stared at her. "For 3 months. For as long as I am wanted." His face changed in the same quiet way it had when he first saw Midnight alive. "You are wanted," he said, "more than I know how to explain." By spring, Midnight's leg had fully healed. Thomas recovered with proper medicine, and Samuel began working with Eli at Red Hollow. The Bennett ranch remained in the family, and Harrison repaired its fences without placing his name on the work. One clear morning in May, Clara stood beside Midnight in a meadow above the valley. Harrison approached with 2 saddled horses. "Eli says Midnight is ready," he said. "Eli is not his healer." "What does his healer say?" Clara examined the stallion's leg one last time. "She says he is sound." Harrison placed one foot in the stirrup, then stopped. "Will you ride with me?" Clara mounted the gray mare beside him. They crossed the meadow slowly, with Midnight moving in a clean, strong step beneath Harrison. At the top of the ridge, Harrison reached across the space between them and held out his hand. Clara placed her hand in his. Below them lay Red Hollow, Pine Creek, the Valley Road, and every place their lives had nearly been broken apart. Harrison looked at her. I thought I had lost everything on that mountain road. You only lost your way. And you found it for me. Clara looked at Midnight's white mark shining in the sun. No, she said softly, he found both of us. Together, they rode home across the valley, while the horse Clara had saved carried the man who had finally learned how to love her.